Hey, and welcome back to another video. And in this week's video, we'll be looking at NavigationLink in SwiftUI. So this view allows us to actually push to views in our SwiftUI apps, and we can also do this programmatically as well. So what we're going to look into is look at how to use a navigation link within a navigation view to handle pushing navigations in our SwiftUI app. So when you're working with NavigationLink, it's really important that you make sure that whatever view you're using is wrapped within a navigation view, or else the pushing won't work. So let's first of all just create a tab view in our content view. And if you want to learn more about tab view, then check out my video tab view in SwiftUI. So I'm just going to remove this and then just add in a tab view. Let's now create two new views, and we'll create a home and a settings screen in our app. Just got two views in this file. I've got a home view and a settings view, and these are the two views that we're going to add into our tab bar here, so you can see the two different types of navigation link implementations we're going to be doing in this video. So in our tab view, let's actually add these views into there. So now we can see our two views in our tab view. So you can see here the home, which is represented by the mint, and our settings, which is represented by the color pink. On our home view, what we're going to do now is actually give it a navigation title. So on the Z stack, if we just go here and just type navigation title, we're going to give this a title of home. And then we're also going to give our settings a title of settings. Cool. So now when you actually add this, you'll notice that you're not actually able to see the navigation title on the screen. And the reason why is because you've not actually put your views, so your home view and your setting views content within a navigation view. So let's fix this. So if you just hold down Command on your keyboard and then click on the Z stack, you should see an option called embed here. And then here we're just going to type out navigation view. And then we're just going to repeat the same process for our settings view as well. So let's do that now. And now you should see that you're able to see your title in your navigation view. So it's really important to make sure that when you're working with navigation views and titles and whatnot, that you make sure that your child content is wrapped within a navigation view. Now we've done that, let's actually add in our logic to actually push to a screen. So like I said before, in order to actually push to a screen in SwiftUI, you need to use a view called a navigation link. This view allows us to define a destination that we want to go to. Now, there are a few examples of how to do this, but we're going to start off with the most basic ones. Let's look into this now, where we set a title and a destination. So we're going to look at this on our first example, which is our home screen. And all I'm going to do is in our Z stack here, rather than us having this text home screen, I'm just going to replace this with a navigation link with a title and a destination. So let's do that now. So let's just click on our text, and then we're just going to embed this in a VStack. And if you want to learn more about VStacks, then check out my video Stacks in SwiftUI. And then below here, we're just going to type out navigation link. Now, when you create an instance of this, you'll see that there's quite a few options that you can work with. Now, the option that we want is where you have a title and a destination. So the first one that's been selected here. So you just hit enter, and I'm going to do some typing out. So if we look at our example, what we've got here is we've got our navigation link here, and you can see that on the screen underneath our text. And the destination we're saying here is that we want it to go to this text view. So if we actually just preview this in the SwiftUI previews, and I just click on this, you'll see that it actually pushes us to this text view, so we can just see only this text on the screen. So if you wanted to push to your own custom view, then you have to add that in here. So as you can see at the top as well, we also get this back button where we can actually go back to the previous screen. So if we tap this, it will take us back. And when we actually tap it, it also adds the title, so the navigation title that we set from the previous screen next to our back button. So if you actually just go back here, you'll notice that the color of our text here is this like accent blue, so the default system blue. If we wanted to, we could actually change the color of this text as well. So let's actually just change this to white, and we can easily do that by just using the foreground style modifier. So now you can see that our text has now been changed to white. So we can actually customize the title that is shown on the screen. So now we saw how to style our text, but what about if we want to have our own custom view in here rather than some text? Well, we can actually do this by using the destination and the label closure. So let's see how to do this now. So you just type out NavigationLink. You should see that there's an option here called destination and label here. So this option here allows you to specify the destination that you want to push to, and the label is the custom content that you want to add onto your screen, which is interactable for the user to go to that view. So let's hit enter on here, and then I'm going to do some typing and we'll break it down. So we've got a similar example like before. So this time our destination here is going to be this text view again, where it says welcome to the profile screen. But this time, rather than our label being some text, if I actually just resume this on the preview, you'll now see that our label for this navigation link is actually this SF symbol. So this SF symbol here is now tappable and will take us to a screen that says, hey, welcome to the profile screen. So let's actually test this out now. So if I tap on this, you'll see now it actually takes me to this, hey, to the welcome profile screen, and it's the same as before, except this time we're not just limited to using some string, we're actually able to pass in our own custom view to handle the navigation. So right now the items in our spacer are quite tight, so let's actually increase the spacing. So we just go to our VStack and then we just change the spacing to something like 18. You'll now see that the spacing between each item has increased, and it's a lot easier to actually, see each one individually. So we've looked at how we can actually push to a view by just using the navigation link and almost using it as a wrapper around the view to handle navigation. But what if we want to push to a view programmatically and still have the capability above as well? Well, right now we're always navigating to our view that is being used by using our destination almost like a button. But what about if we want to navigate based on some kind of source of truth? Well, NavigationLink accepts a bool binding which can be used to trigger a navigation. So let's see how to do this now. Now let's add in a source of truth in our home view. So in our home view, if we just scroll up here at the top here, we want to add in a new source of truth. I'm just going to type it out. So this is the source of truth for this view that's going to dictate whether we should actually go to a detail screen. So right now it's Boolean because we want that to be either true or false. So the next thing that we want to do is actually add in a navigation link that uses this source of truth to handle pushing to a screen. So the one that we want to use is the option that has the isActive parameter. So underneath this navigation link, let's just type this out. So we go to navigation link, you should see an option that has the isActive parameter here. So we want to use this one. So what this will allow us to do is specify a title. So I can say here, go to detail, and then isActive is going to be the source of truth that we want to bind this navigation link to, which in our case is this should show detail. And then the destination is where we want our view to go to. So in this case, we're going to say the destination should be our text. So you can see now that we actually have this on the screen here, and if you actually tap on this, you'll see that it works the exact same. So it's still almost like it's a wrapper around this text, and if you tap on it, you can push to this screen. But what we're actually able to do is actually trigger this navigation here without actually ever touching this button. We can just handle it programmatically. So in order to do that, we're going to add in a button that will actually toggle this source of truth to true and handle navigation to the detail screen. So let's add in a button to do that now. We have a group here that we're using to group our two elements. We have a button. So this button is just using the new iOS 15 system styles, where we can specify the button style and the control size as well. And within this button's action, we're actually toggling whether should show detail is true. If this gets tapped, it'll actually change this to true. And by this being true, it will force our navigation link to actually push to this screen. So let's actually test it out now. So on our trigger detail push, if we tap on this button, you'll see it actually takes us to the detail screen. So it actually triggers and activates linking to this screen via the navigation link. If we go back and we tap on go to detail, it also does the same capability. So now we have two ways of actually navigating to that detail screen, either A, by tapping on this button, or B, if we didn't want someone to tap on it, so we can actually disable this. So now that it's disabled, you can't tap on it. But what we could do is we could actually manually push someone to that screen like so. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to remove this disabled. We're not just limited to actually using just the, string here. If we wanted to, we actually could copy the example where we have the destination and our own custom label. So let's actually add in another example this time, but this time we're actually going to push to a document screen. So in order to do that, because we've got another group that we want to add in, we need to add in another source of truth. So let's add that in now. Now we've got our source of truth in here for our documents. Let's actually add in our new group for handling pushing to the document screen. And as you can see now, with our group, it's the exact same as before our button, but this time, rather than a navigation link just having a string, we've actually passed in our own custom label, as you can see here with the doc symbol, and we've also passed in the destination, which is this text here. So if we actually tap on this doc, you'll see that it pushes us to the document screen, but we're also able to trigger pushing to this via our button by manipulating our source of truth by just tapping this button here. So let's do that now. So you can see it's the same thing. So we've actually got two examples here. One example where you just got a string for the navigation link, and another example where you actually have your own custom views and destination as well. So now we saw how to push to these screens, but what about if I'm on the document and I want to push back to the previous screen? Well, we can do this with bindings and also using environment values too. So now let's look at an example of both of these, and to learn more about this, you can check out my video presenting views in SwiftUI. So let's create a new SwiftUI view called Documents Detail View, and we'll pass in a binding variable called isShown. And I know I said I was going to call it isShown, but I think show documents details is a bit more descriptive. So we will get an error here saying that we're missing this parameter for our binding. So to fix this, we just need to pass in a constant value. I'm going to say true, like so. And then just so we can actually see this a lot easier when we're actually testing this out, I'm just going to say hello world from documents details example, like so. And then now let's add in two buttons onto our screens that will show how we can push back using our two methods. So on the screen here, I'm just going to add in two buttons. Now the two examples that we're going to be looking at is how to dismiss this screen via a binding, so via this binding, and also how to dismiss this screen using an environment value. Now let's actually handle our binding first, and in our dismiss via our binding, we can just simply call the toggle to set it back to false. So in our show documents details binding, we'll just say toggle, and then this will now change this from true back to false, or we could explicitly just set it to false like this if you wanted to. Either way, either one is valid. Now let's actually use this view in our home screen. So if you go back to your content view, in here, rather than us having this text here, so saying showing document screen, let's remove this, and now we'll use our documents detail view. And then for our show document details, we want to use this binding here. So we want to use our should show documents. Cool. So now what should happen when we go to this document details view and we tap on the dismiss via bindings, it should take us back to this screen. So let's just run this now. And if I click on this button, it will take us to this screen. Now we've not handled this environment value ones yet, and we'll do that next. But our dismiss via bindings, if we tap this, you'll see it actually pushes us back to the previous screen. So by us actually changing our source of truth within this file, it will automatically trigger us going back via our navigation link. Actually go here and tap on this, and then tap on this again. You'll see it takes us back to the previous screen. So now that we've looked at how to do this with bindings, let's actually see how we can use the environment value to dismiss a screen as well. Now, the advantage of environment values is that we're able to call this code from any of our SwiftUI files, since we're just accessing something that we've injected into the environment. I'm going to type this out and then break it down. So we'll go into our document detail view, and I'm just going to add in two environment values at the top here, and we'll discuss them. Now, looking at this, starting with iOS 15, there was a new environment value added called dismiss. And what this allows you to do is what the name implies. If you push to a screen or if you presented a screen, you're able to call the dismiss environment value function to close that screen. Now, prior to iOS 15, we actually had this environment value called presentation mode, which allows you to access the wrapped value and call a dismiss function. So if you're someone who's only supporting iOS 15 and above, then you actually don't need this here on line 13. But if you're someone who's supporting everything from iOS 15 and below, then you will need to implement these two environment values. So let's actually use this in our function. In our file here, below our struct, I'm going to create a new private extension. And what this function is going to allow us to do is handle dismissing our view on either iOS 15 or below. Now, in order to do that, what we're going to need to do is actually use the @available flag to check to see if this app is available on iOS 15. So if you're on an iOS 15 device, then call this dismiss, or else we want to call the presentation mode. So let's type this out now and then break it down. Okay, cool. So like I said before, we're checking to see if you're on iOS 15 and above, then we'll call this dismiss, or else if you're not on iOS 15 and anything below iOS 14, 13 or 12, then we will call this presentation mode wrap value.dismiss. So this now handles all the OSs where you could possibly dismiss the view. Now let's actually add this into our function. So we'll call this here. And let's actually test this out. So we go back to our content view and we just run this again. We'll tap our button here to trigger the document push. We'll just hit resume to make sure we got the latest updates. So we'll tap on this here. And this time, rather than tapping on this button, let's tap on dismiss via environment values. And you can see that actually takes us back to the previous screen. So we actually didn't need to pass in a binding to actually dismiss our screen. We just use the environment value directly. Now you may be wondering, when would you want to use a binding and when would you want to use the environment value? Now, in my opinion, I tend to agree more with using the environment value because sometimes you probably don't need access to the source of truth as to whether the navigation link is active, and you could just use the environment value to just manually dismiss it from any file, which makes it a lot nicer for me in my opinion. So you've noticed that whenever we push to a screen, we actually have this back button here. But what about if we were going to dismiss this back button at the top here and instead only allow the user to be able to push back via these two buttons? Well, on our document details view, we can actually hide this navigation view bar header. So let's go into our documents detail view, and on our VStack, let's just set here navigation bar hidden is equal to true. So what this modifier will allow us to do is hide the navigation bar on this screen specifically. So we go back to our content view, and then we just hit resume, and now if we push to that screen, you should now see that you don't have the back button in the top left hand corner anymore, and the only way to get back is by either pressing these two buttons like so. Sweet. So we've looked at how we can use bools to navigate, but what about if we're in a situation where we need to programmatically handle pushing to a screen 2 levels deep and then back to the last screen of the route? Well, we can accomplish this by using enums. So let's create a new enum and then we'll break it down. So let's go back into our content view, and at the top here, I'm just going to create an enum called screens. So we've got our enum here, screens, with our cases that we're going to be handling for our screens. But one thing to note as well is that I've added this extension here on screens, hashable, so it actually conforms to the hashable protocol. So you may be wondering, why has this been added in? Well, when you're working with NavigationLink and you want to handle it using something like an enum, you need to make sure that your enum cases are hashable so that they're unique. This is so that when you're pushing to a specific screen and you give it a tag, you're giving it that unique identifier by using the hashable protocol. So now I'm going to quickly just build some screens for each one of the enums that I've actually added in these cases. So let's do that now. So we've just got some simple screens here. I've just got a marketing options view, submit marketing options views, and an app version view. As of right now, they just got a VStack with some simple text in it, and we're going to add more to this later on. And I've also moved the screen's enums below near the settings view, since this is where this example we will be working on is going to be added. Now, in order to specifically control the screen we push to, we need to create a source of truth in our root file. So let's do this now by creating a source of truth. Now, before, the source of truth we created were the state properties within the file directly. If you wanted to, you could actually create a view model using the observable object and publish property wrapper to handle a source of truth for multiple screens within your app, which is what we're going to look into now. And to learn more about this, you should check out my video, Environment Object in SwiftUI. Just above our enum screens here, I'm just going to do a bit of typing when we create our source of truth, and then we'll break it down. So what we have here is our settings navigation manager, and it is using the observable object type so we can actually listen to updates within this class. I've also got a publish property here, screen, and whenever this gets set, we're just going to simply print what screen that the user has gone to. And then finally, we have a function here called push, which will actually push to the screen that we want to. So by calling this function, it will actually trigger the navigation within our SwiftUI app. Now, let's actually inject our source of truth into the settings view environment so all of its children can access this navigation manager we've created. So in our content view, let's inject it and we'll create an instance of it. So if you just scroll up, within our content view here, we actually want to create an instance of that view model. And then after we create an instance of our view model, we then simply just want to inject this into the relevant views. So in this case, we want to inject it into our settings view. In our settings view, let's actually use the environment object property wrapper to access this new source of truth that we just created here. So we just scroll down to our settings view here. We want to add the environment object property wrapper. Cool. Now in previous videos, you would have saw that after I've done this, I've then also added an instance of this source of truth to our SwiftUI preview. But in this case, we actually don't have a SwiftUI preview for our settings view, so we don't need to do that. We only need to just add in the environment object property wrapper. So if you have a previews for your view, then you should add in the environment object modifier and inject your source of truth. But in this case, we don't need to. So now on our settings view, what we want to do is actually add in some buttons that will push to these three screens that we created above. So in order to do that, what we're going to do first of all is just create a button and then call our function to push to marketing options. So let's handle marketing options first. So I'm just going to create a new VStack here. And then within our VStack, underneath our text here, what we're going to do is add in a button. And we're just going to use the option with the title and action. Cool. So we've got our button here, and we're just calling our settings manager to push to the marketing option screen. Now, right now, when we actually tap on this button on the settings screen, nothing is actually going to happen, and that's because we've not actually hooked this up to a navigation link. So when you're working with a navigation link and you want to use enums, you have to use the navigation link initializer with the tag option. So let's actually just do this now. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set this button to have a background of a navigation link, and I'll explain this later on as to why I'm doing it like this. So on the button, if you just type out background, and then within the parentheses for the background, we're going to add in a navigation link. And then for this navigation link, what I want to do is use the option where you can specify a tag, selection, destination, and a label. So let's just hit enter on this. So what is the tag? Well, remember, like I said before, when we created our enum for our screens, we actually made it conform to the hashable protocol so that it was unique. So this tag is the tag for this navigation link for the screen that we want to push to. So in our case, the tag that we actually want to pass in here is the dot marketing options. So let's just type this out now, like so. The selection here is the binding that our navigation link is going to listen to. So let's just add this in now, and then we'll break that down a bit more. So what we're saying here now is our navigation link is bound to the screen in our settings manager, and if the screen matches this tag market options, then it should actually trigger pushing to another screen. So it's actually going to check to see if the screen property in our settings navigation views, so if this property here matches the tag that we've given it, then it should trigger a push to the destination that we're going to specify. So for our destination, this is going to be our marketing options view. And then for our label, because we don't want to show anything for this navigation link, I'm just going to add in an empty view. Cool. Okay. So now we created our first navigation link and actually tagged it using the enum to go to the marketing options screen whenever, pause. So now we've got our navigation link and its tag is to go to the marketing options screen. But you may be wondering, why did I use this background? Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, when you're working with SwiftUI, navigation link is actually still a view. Now, I don't want to be in a situation where this navigation link actually gets rendered in my VStack and it starts to mess up the layout of the views on the screen. So instead, what I tend to do is when I'm working with navigation links that I want a button to trigger an action for, I usually set it as the background so that you can't see it on the screen and it's not really interactable as well. So that's why I do this technique here. So what we're going to do now is actually add in another button to actually go to the app version screen. So this time I'm going to actually just type this one out and then we'll break it down. So you can see here that we've now done a similar thing, except this time our function is saying to push to the app version enum screen, and we've also tagged our navigation link with the app version enum, and also as well the selection is just monitoring this screen property within our source of truth, and as well our destination this time is our app version view. So if you actually want to learn more about how you can actually set the background of views, then you should check out my video backgrounds and overlays in SwiftUI. Let's actually test this out and see if this actually works. So if we tap on this, you'll see that it actually pushes us to the right screen. If we tap on the app versions, it actually pushes us to the app version screen. So now we actually have our source of truth that we can call to trigger actually pushing to specific screens using our view model. So this is great. So we've actually only gone down one level here, and by one level I mean we've only pushed to one screen. But what about if on this screen we want to have another button that went to another screen, and then we also want to control going back to the root or going back by one screen? Now I know that was a lot, but we'll see this in action. So at the time of this video, if you want to go multiple levels deep, you need to use a navigation link that we used in the first example without the selection and the tag to get this working. And if you use the selection and tag in this view, you'll have a bug where it pushes you back to the first view. So that's why you need to use an empty navigation link to actually push down to another level. So we'll actually look at how we can do this now. So what we're going to do is on our marketing options view, we're actually going to add another button that pushes us to the submit marketing view. So in our marketing options view, we just scroll up. Rather than us having just this text now, we're actually going to add in another navigation link that goes to another screen. So let's do that now. Now what we've got here on our marketing options view, if you just got a navigation link that takes us to another view, which is the submit marketing options view. Now the reason why I've not used the source of truth that we had before is because, like I said before, at the time of making this video, there's actually a bug where if you have a tag within child views, it actually pushes you back to the first view. So this is how you can get around it. So if we go to our settings and we actually tap on marketing options, you'll see now we have this new button to go to the marketing options screen. If we tap on this, you can now see it pushes us to the submit marketing options screen. And if we actually tap on the back button, we're able to go back to the previous screen, and we can go all the way back to the home screen as well. So now we're able to actually navigate 2 levels deep now, because this is our second screen. And one thing to note that I didn't mention as well is that when you actually push to a screen, you actually get this swipe functionality by default, where you can actually swipe from the leading edge and it'll take you back to the previous screen as well. So that's a nice touch you get when you're using the system's navigation. So now that we've looked into that, what I want to do on this submit marketing option screens is actually see how it's possible for us to go back to the root, which is our first view, the settings view, or just pop back one screen by using our source of truth. So in our view, let's actually add in two new buttons. So if we go to our submit marketing options view, in here we're just going to add in two new buttons. And what these two buttons are going to allow us to do is, like I said before, we're going to go to the root, and the root is the first screen that you see, and go back to the previous screen. So in our source of truth, how can we actually trigger going back to the root via our view model? Well, the first thing we need to do in our submit marketing options view is we need to actually use the environment object property wrapper within this file. So let's actually add this in now. And if you're wondering why this view is actually able to access this environment object, remember before we actually injected this environment object into our settings view. So any child within this setting view will automatically get access to this environment object, which is why that view is able to access it. In our settings navigation manager, we actually need to write a function that actually allows us to go back to the root. So let's actually do this now. If you scroll up, within here, we want to create a new function called pop to root. And when you're working with pushing to screens using a navigation link by having a view model, the simple way to go all the way back to the start is by simply setting this screen here to nil. So the selection that your views are monitoring within the navigation link, if you actually set that to nil, this will actually cause your views to actually go all the way back to the root. So let's actually scroll down, and then in our go to root action in here, what we're going to say here is to say settings manager dot pop to root, like so. Cool. And then let's test this out. So we go to our marketing options and we tap on it. Cool. And go to our submit marketing options, and we now have our two buttons. So if we tap on our go to root, you'll now see that it takes us all the way back to the start because we've actually set our screen in our settings manager to nil, and because it's nil, this system will automatically go back to the very start. So we also had one more action here, which was to go to the previous screen. And also do this, all we need to do is just copy the logic that we did before, where we used the environment values to actually push back to our previous screen. So let's just copy our environment values that we added in before. So in our documents details view, we'll just copy these environment values and we'll just paste that into our submit marketing options, like so. And then we'll also copy the logic that we use to actually dismiss that screen. So let's copy this, and then we'll put that in there like so. Okay, cool. So let's actually test this all out. So we'll go into our settings, we'll go to our marketing options, submit marketing screen. If we hit go to previous screen now, it actually takes us back to the previous screen we were on, which is the marketing options screen. If we go forward again and we hit go to root, it takes us back to the root as well. So now we've got our multi-level navigation working, and we're also handling going back to the previous screen as well as popping all the way back to the root. Now, before we wrap up, I just want to show you how we can actually add in and use navigation link in our navigation headers here. So let's actually add in two icons which will allow us to push to our app version screen and also our marketing screen as well. So we're going to do this by using the toolbar modifier on our settings screen. If you just scroll down underneath your navigation title, what you want to do is actually add in the toolbar modifier, and I'm just going to type this out and then we'll break it down. What we've got here, if we've added in our toolbar, and if we just go to our settings screen, you should now see that you have an icon here in the top left hand corner. So we've created a toolbar item, and we said that we want the placement of it to be navigation bar leading, as you can see here. And within our toolbar, we've actually added in a navigation link where the destination will be the app version view that you can go to via here, and we've given it a tag of app version, and we've also bound it to the screen property within our navigation manager in our settings manager environment property. And then finally within it, the label that we're using isn't some text, it's actually an image. Now one thing that I've realized is that this name is actually not that great, so what we're going to do is just do a simple find and replace and just rename this within the file to settings nav manager. So just go find and replace in project. So just go find that, and then we want to replace it with settings nav manager. So we'll just say replace all. Cool. And then now we should see that our settings nav manager is what we're using. And if you just go back to our settings screen, you should see that also everything's looking all good. So we've now got our button here in our toolbar, and if we actually just test this out by tapping on it, you'll see that it actually pushes us to the screen. So we're actually able to add in navigation links within our toolbar to handle pushing to specific screens within our navigation flow. And if we wanted to as well, we could actually have a group of toolbar items that also handle it and do the same, so we can actually push to specific screens within our actual navigation flow. So we could go directly to this screen, and we could go directly to this screen as well if we wanted to. So let's actually add in 2 buttons here on the right hand side that allow us to do that. So we've now got, rather than a toolbar item, we've now got a toolbar item group, and I've said here that I want the navigation placement of it to be on the right hand side, so you can see them here. Now within this we've got 2 navigation links, and we're actually independently specifically going to specific screens. So on our first one here, which is our document, we're saying that we want to go to the marketing options screen, and we're giving it this tag. So if we tap on this now, you'll see that actually takes us to our marketing options screen, and within it we can also tap on this button to go to the submit marketing options screen as well. And within this screen we can still use the same functionality to go all the way back to the root, or if we wanted to, we could go back to the previous screen that was on. So the final one that we have here is our submit marketing options, which is the last screen within our marketing options flow. So if I actually tap on this, you'll see it takes me directly to the submit marketing options screen. But one interesting thing to note here is that if I actually tap on go to root, it actually takes me all the way back to the start, which is where I was at before. And if I actually tap here on go to previous screen, it also takes me back to the root as well. So this isn't taking me back to the marketing options screen, because at the moment in time when I push to this screen, this view, marketing options view, is not on the navigation stack. So it's actually just taking me back to the last screen, which was this screen that we pushed from, and the root is also this, because this is the first screen that we pushed from as well. So you can see here, by using toolbar items, you're able to also specifically push to individual screens or a specific part of your flow within your SwiftUI apps, which is really useful. So that's everything in this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a comment in the comment section below with some feedback. Also as well, if you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell to get updates for whenever I release a new video. That's everything from me. I'll catch you in a bit. Deuces.